belongs to you, Lord. Heaven and earth shouts, holy is our God. You are my Father. Our dominion belongs to you, Lord. All of creation will bow before you. You are my Father, you are my Savior. You have restored me. Now I belong to you. The Lord is my King. Now I belong to you. You are my Father, you are my Savior. You have restored me, now I belong to you. When I was lost, your mercy found me. Now I am yours, Lord, I belong to you. I belong to you. I belong to you. I belong to you.
Good afternoon or good evening. This is Chance, your host for this program tonight, God, Church and Politics, that comes to you on a Monday evening, and this is 1934. Apologies. Not actually, we actually started right on time, but I had to treat you a little bit with a song by Matamando saying, I belong to you. In fact, I'm a big fan of our local artists, and the first thing I would like to say to you is follow her. She is one great musician, one great worship artist that we need to be proud of and be supportive. Greetings, and I would like to welcome you in a very, very special way. Tonight, we're in for a beautiful discussion. We're in for an intriguing one, but very, very important for us to discuss and talk about. Welcome once again. Tell somebody else we're live, and we'll be back in a second. Tonight we're talking Africa and its plight. The plight of Africa has been in the scrutiny, not only just by us ourselves, but uh, around the world. People they look at the effectiveness of our organization as a continent, um, as a nation, as individual nations, as whether we can really mount a challenge and um, be a force to be reckoned with. Africa has too much of its resources to be suffering today. Africa probably should be leading by example, but it's not the case. There's too much that's happening that actually has pushed us backwards in so many ways. But somehow we think, and I believe there's a bit of hope on the horizon because of what we've seen happening in certain nations in this very continent of Africa. And so we are in Africa today talking about is there a revolution? And we're going to define that word in a very simple terms. Is there a revival happening? Also, we're going to talk about what does that mean. As Christians, of course, we are compelled to, to gear up and to love our countries and pray for our nations that there be peace. According to the Word of God, it says, "Pray that we lead a peaceful life in a nation. Pray for the authorities that we lead a peaceful life." It is important that we understand our role in government so that we don't push it out. One clip I posted, I think a month, if not some weeks ago, by one Reverend John, is it Johnson from the USA? He speaks about the devil's lie to the Christian circle or to the Christian world has been to have nothing to do with politics, saying it is of the devil, because he just wants to manipulate that system and control the lives of the many. Because the reality is, if the devil can control the systems of the world, it manipulates even the Christian to bow to him somehow. Anyway, today we will be talking about, is there a revolution in Africa? Or are we just excited for really nothing? I'm not alone. Trust me. I have Dr. Felix, all the way from Lilongwe. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everybody.
From the capital. Tell us
That's
about
right.
tell us about the weather there.
Well, it was cooler today. It's been very hot the past 2 weeks, actually. And
Right.
so it drizzled actually in the evening for just about, I don't know, some 10 minutes there. Yeah, so
Right.
looking forward to more rain and a
Okay.
great harvest. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Well, we would love to hear about the rains, surely. You know, Africa
yeah.
is, I think, is more, we pride ourselves in agriculture. So surely when we hear about the rains, it's good news, isn't it?
That's right. Very good news.
Very long time. I said to you, it's a long time since I saw you on this program again.
That's right. That's it. Glad to be back.
It's good to have you again today. It's a blessing.
Thank you so much.
Let me also welcome a friend from Leeds. No, Bradford and Leeds. David, please don't be mad at me.
Oh no, it's all good.
Greetings and welcome.
Thank you, sir.
It's good to have you today. And I know you're busy, you've been up and down, but hey, here you are. Have some time for us. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's good to be here, and good to see you, Doc Felix. It's good to see you, sir.
Same here, brother.
Bless you, sir.
It's been a while.
Yes, it has.
Yes.
It's good to be here. Looking forward to it.
Let me also welcome Pastor Chucks, my good sister, all the way from Blantyre. Greetings.
Greetings to you. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
So good to see all of you.
Amen.
Amen.
And tell us about the weather. Is it the same like in Lilongwe as it is in Blantyre? Are you guys?
It's been raining the past few days, so we are good now.
So things are looking up. Things are looking up.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Chucks, welcome once again. It's always you know what I talk about you. So it's always a pleasure to have you on this broadcast, and we let me also welcome a good friend of mine all the way from Northampton. UK is leading the way by the looks of it. Maybe not. Bishop Gilbert Gamble. I have to pronounce it. I have to pronounce it with some vigor in it. Gilbert Gamble.
Thank you, man.
Very welcome today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
And I think probably new faces you might, I don't know whether you've seen before, but we have Dr. David Kalua, we have Dr. Felix Nika, we have Pastor Chakonge. Have you met Chakonge? Oh yeah, you were last. No. Chakonge, have you met? Okay.
No, we haven't met.
I think I was only eavesdropping on your program when she was talking.
Right. Okay.
And she was the only one who was talking sense.
I hope the others are not. Dr. Felix, we need to sue Bishop Gamble after this. Surely, I give you permission, Dr. Felix.
No, anyway. She's the one who got me when she said, roads are development, and I was like, yeah, I think I agree with you. I mean, we sometimes think. Anyway, let's leave that. Let's leave that. Good to see you, my sister. Good to see you.
Same here.
Okay. So, gentlemen and lady, I would like to welcome you once again in a very special way to this program, and we are talking Africa on the Rise. And let me, in a very special way, welcome the viewers. Please share the video. Tell somebody we are live right now, and we will be discussing the revolution, I call it. And somebody was asking, actually, can you define what that is? Surely, I would love me to define that from the start. But before I do that, anyway, let's just a little bit, chip in a little bit of what this means, individually. The revolution of Africa. I am speaking, if you like, I took that thread because of what I have seen in certain nations in Africa. And that is one of it is Malawi and Zambia recently. Also, to just add a little bit, Uganda went to the polls, and maybe the outcome was not as probably what's happened in Malawi and in Zambia, but there was an outcome. Something that I'm so much concerned is the new system in place, and the will of the people having to come on top of everything that probably we ever knew Africa is known of. Corruption was one thing that actually just was the order of the day in most of the nations, but somehow we see, and I mean, let's be honest, probably we cannot, clean it up completely, but at least we can see some transparency beginning to walk in certain places in these nations. Now, so that thread of revolution or revival, I'm talking of what I'm beginning to see because of what I've seen in these nations. That's where my argument comes from. So let me just throw it out there. Let me start with Dr. Felix. Do you think you agree to my point that this, in some ways, we can call it a bit of a revival happening in Africa?
Now we're not speaking religious revival, right?
No.
Okay. No. So reviving the life as of the people and progress moving on.
Yes,
that kind of thing.
Much like that. Yes.
Yeah, I can say so. I can say so, but very cautiously. For the simple reason that it seems like in our case, Malawi's case, and a lot of African countries' cases, there seems to be an elite that makes enough space for things to seem to be moving forward. But when you look at the actual things that our people need, the health services, the education, the access to capital and all these things, there really isn't that much of a drastic change, right? And so, and for us, we have a new regime that's been around just over 2 years, I think, right now. And usually the tendency is at the very beginning, all the promises that were made would, they'll try their best to start making them. But then after a while, you start seeing, the actual colors of that particular regime. And unfortunately, I think that our ruling elite in Africa, and especially places like Malawi, is that they're in it for themselves. That's what it looks like, because at the end of the day, you don't really see that much meaningful change, right? There isn't that much meaningful change. And it always feels like, okay, people come with all these great promises, and then after a while, there's nothing happening, or people feel like they've been let down, So I'll be very cautious. I think in the interim, we're seeing some little movement, but then I think we want to see the kind of movement that, is going to last another 10 years, 20 years, that kind of stuff.
I think that is the main thing in talking about the lasting impact, rather than just the beginning of something that we begin to see. I mean, Dr. David, your country has gone through a phase by which you and me didn't talk. I think after the elections, probably the first one that I would say to you is, are you satisfied with what had happened on the elections? Are you comfortable with what is happening right now? And do you see the revival in Zambia in terms of people's lives and people's will being, elevated and being met like we just? I just want you just to put together everything from the start of after the aftermath of the the elections in Zambia. But then, do you see the revival we're talking about?
Very interesting use of language. Actually, I was listening to Dr. Nika say that when he says spiritual or political revival, I think that's the first place or the best place to start, because when we use the word revival loosely, mostly it would allude to a spiritual awakening. While when we talk about a revolution, which is another word you used, the primary meaning for revolution is actually quite more drastic, because it involves forceful removal of a regime or government or social impact. But you can also use revolution for drastic change in things. And I think there is a little bit of that going on in Africa. But when it comes to Zambia in particular, according to your question, Zambia is blessed in so many ways, in the sense that we have enjoyed several presidents since Kenneth Kaunda. And we've had Chiluba, Mwanawasa, and Rupia Banda, and then we've had Michael Satter, and then we've had Edgar Lungu, and now we have Hakainde Hichilema in power. And all these transitions with no violence in terms of war, civil war, or unrest or anything like that, which is a huge blessing. At the same time, if you ask me about democracy, you could say, wow, great picture of democracy, except, I might anger a few people by saying this, but I believe that the democracy that we held and praise, and I was one of those people who is proud of Zambia for upholding such an amazing thing democratically. But at the same time, when I look at Africa, Zambia in particular, and many other countries like us, I am not so sure that we are ready as a continent, as a nation, to really fully roll out Western democracy the way it is supposed to be rolled out, or the way it works in the Western world, for so many reasons. So while it is a great thing that we've had a change of power and there's been smooth transitions and peaceful transitions, I think what concerns me a lot is I heard Dr. Nika say that sometimes people come into power with the right intentions and you give them the benefit of the doubt. And I believe Zambia did need a change. And kudos to the Zambian people, especially the young people and the women, for coming out to vote in record numbers. Most of the time when you see record numbers come out to vote, you know that the ruling party is in trouble. But they came out and they voted, and there is a change of regime, which is a brilliant thing. And I uphold the people of Zambia for doing that. So now we are in a place where we are hoping and expecting that the new government will live up to their promises. They will live up to the nice words that they have promised and given, because at the moment that's all they are, nice words. The good thing about me is I'm non-partisan. I don't belong to any party, so I can say this without offending anybody. I would like to believe, I would like to believe that Hakainde Hichilema's government have the right intentions, good intentions, and they will do the right things. And they're also trying to eradicate corruption and try to put in rule of law and put things in place. At the same time, I'm still cautious because nobody comes into power saying, I'm going to ruin your country, I'm going to damage it, I'm going to steal, I'm going to be corrupt. Nobody. Everybody comes saying, I'm going to do the right thing. So I think we have to be cautious, which is the same word my brother there, Dr. Nyika, just said, and just wait and see where we are going. And my hope is that we will start afresh and have a better chance. To be honest with you, without going on too much, the greatest problem I have with Western democracy in Africa is that every single, I'll use Zambia as an example, okay? We've had so many presidents, as I've outlined, but every single president who comes in with this mindset. Everything my predecessors did was rubbish, okay? This is how they come in. They were all rubbish. They ruined everything. We're going to throw everything away. The baby with the bathwater. We have to start afresh. So we are always starting. You can never arrive if you're always starting. And that's my main concern. There is no continuity. Even the current government is talking the same language. Let's sack everybody, change everybody, throw everything that was before us and start afresh. But if we are always starting, what happens when you now go out of power and your vision that you started is not accomplished? Then you have to start again. I was listening to the president of Malawi, Lazarus Chakwera, 2 weeks ago, announcing a new outset of we're going to create jobs and we're going to do all these things, a 10-year plan to make Malawi a middle-class income nation. But then what happens after the 10 years? If somebody new comes in, are they going to throw everything away and start again? That's my biggest problem with Western democracy in Africa. And I find it very difficult. It doesn't work. I better shut up before I go on.
Okay, so I think that is very interesting. I mean, I don't want to begin to to dissect that, but let me move to the next Chucks. I want you to comment. There seems to be a cry of as much as there is something started, but there's the backbone of it is not there. Can we sustain what we're seeing happening in the nations? I think to some extent, again, as much as we can say probably it's just two nations responding to the will of the people, but at least something has begun. Let's be honest. Dr. David says in Zambia, the majority of the young people went to the polls. And when you see the young people polls, that means they're dissatisfied with whatever was happening. In Malawi, it was the same thing. The people actually who ousted the former government was the young people. They just wanted their country to somebody who can actually hear them and hear their cry. Do we have the stamina, the backbone to sustain this?
I think I would say that maybe the things we keep getting to a point where we are like stuck because maybe we are changing the wrong things. I'm thinking that we keep changing governments, but at the end of the day, we keep getting disappointed. So somehow maybe we need to start looking at what really is the problem. Why are we going in circles? Why are we starting and not finishing this thing? We've changed governments and nothing changes. We get to the same point. So maybe we've been changing politicians, but we ourselves as citizens haven't been changing. And because citizens haven't been changing, we've been going in circles. And secondly, I would also think of, are we really free as countries? Because we still have the colonialists somehow still controlling us. And so if that hasn't changed, governments will keep going in circles. They can promise things, but when they get into the government, they find that things are not as they see when they're outside. They don't know the real things that are happening behind the scenes. So when they get there, they find that even though they had good policies, they get there and they find that the colonialists have got their own policies that they put in place and they're still there and nothing has changed. So they go there and they find that they can't do much. So even though they've been promising things, their hands are tied So from outside, they're speaking really good things, but when they go inside, they find that it's not the same. So I'm looking at these two things: we, the citizens, changing, and then and also trying to see what we can do as a people, because we are still under the colonialists, even though it's been over 50 years.
Boy, Bishop Gilbert, the question is probably for you. You can pick up from whatever these men and women have actually just talked about our Africa. What is your take in all before we can actually begin to go deeper into the questionnaire that we have? What is your take? Go ahead into whatever you wanted to have a teeth into that has been spoken here.
I think I envied my brother David when he was counting the number of presidents that his country has had. I envied that because I only counted 1, 2, and I stopped there. So
okay, let's be specific. You are talking of 1, 2 Zimbabwe, right?
Yeah, when David was saying, "Oh, we have had so and so," I'm like, "Okay, David, go ahead, man. I'm not with you now. We don't do that. We don't just rush to have presidents. We stick to one. Anyway, my thoughts would be, I think others have covered this already. I don't really think we are there is any political revival. I know you have cited Malawi, you have cited Zambia, and I think David or Dr. Nika they also touched that. I would disagree that there's any revival. I think we are just going in circles. We're going back where we started. These guys who are coming that we are thinking is revival, they're just promising us what we were promised decades ago. We have been here before, where no leaders come and they tell you it's all going to be great. For my own example, when Mugabe came, we thought, I was young then, but I'm told by the elders that we thought we were going somewhere. And we keep hearing the same story. A new person comes, they'll tell us, promise us heaven. But I think the problem is, which is where I kind of disagree with David, and then at the end, being a preacher, he managed to get me back to his line of thinking. I think our biggest problem is, what exactly is political revival? If Western democracy is political revival, then I tend to disagree with that. I think what we are calling revival is just Africa doing what the West wants done, or Africa being approved by the West. Then we think it's political revival. So I think we may need to define what exactly we mean by Africa is being revived politically. I think Africa is now just doing exactly what's expected by the West and ticking the boxes of the West, and we are now calling it that political revival.
But would you not? I get your point that probably you are against the idea that we should just copy and paste from the West. I get that. Would you not, though, still believe that the West is far better than Africa in terms of governance and its transparent systems? Would you not say, in some way, in some quarters, they are far ahead in terms of their
in some quarters, yes, they still smarter than we do. They have their dosages of corruption. It's not as I always say to people, I think our there is corruption. There's corruption chance. I think, without me throwing names, I think recently there's someone now who's now retired or forced to resign from being an advisor to the prince because he or she promised someone that if you do this for me, I'll push for you to be a lord. I'll push for you to have citizenship. That's corruption, but it's done here in the UK. If it was us, it would have been something else. I think our problem is we steal the window frames, we steal the door frames, we steal the tiles, and nothing is built. But these guys will build the structure and then nick a few things. So I think we cannot say they are. I don't know if I can say they are better. We just our own enemies. We are good, but we're just our own enemies.
Right. So, okay, I get you, Bishop Gumbo. Well, I'm going to come. We're going to come probably to that. So in this, we are saying there's a little bit, Dr. Nika, if I come back to you, you started by saying, I see, you know, a fire. Let's put it this way. I see something lit up, but there's no backbone in this. There's no stamina. I mean, what needs to be done then for the stamina to be there, for the continuation of what we're seeing? Do you think there is something else that, you know, African governance or African systems can accommodate to be able to bring in these new systems without fail, so that we sustain them for real? The truth of the matter is that we want every youthful person. Even this one says here, listen, it says revival is happening in Africa. Citizen participation is there. And we are moving towards holding those in power accountable. Would you agree to that? And maybe, is there anything else that we really feel that needs to be in place for a real stability of this kind of system that we're talking about, Dr. Felix?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we really need to unpack what our problem is. I think when we unpack what our problem is, or what our problems are, or at least the root or roots of our problems, then we will be in a position now we can start saying, okay, this is the solution to it. So I think number one, we need to understand that our transition from being colonized to being independent states was kind of faulty, right? It is said that we were given the power we're given the throne, we're given the crown without the treasury. Right, and so say in the case of Baba Gilbert Mosha home in Zimbabwe, right? So we're given the political power, but then the economy was not in our hands, right? Very same thing with South Africa. We got the political power, but we don't control the economy. And over time, as populations grow, as you need to provide more services, you know, the whole thing breaks down. So I think there's one aspect where, you know, we don't have the resources because we don't control the resources, right? And then also the whole big man politics that we practice, which is also a carryover of colonialism, in the sense that the colonial masters ensured that they had people in place that they had reached a compromise with, right? And unfortunately, again, many of those seem to be very eager to sit down and reach compromises with the colonizer, as opposed to saying, okay, let's take this country because it's ours. And you cannot do that unless you win a war, right? And so we find ourselves in situations where if we did not compromise but won the war, well, it ended up that the people that led us were still stooges that just wanted to get, you know, to milk our countries, that did not care for the people on the ground. Right, so here, I don't know, I'm going to call names, they're dead people anyway. So Mobutu Sese Seko was preferred by the West instead of Lumumba, right? And so, you know, stuff like that going on. And so I think we need to look at our situation, not just in the historical moment that we find ourselves in, but also where we have come from, right? And so where we find ourselves is the place where we have people that are over us, by and large, that have carried on the political culture of those before them. So that's why, you know, in the case of Malawi, and I'm sure the very same thing in the case of Zambia, we never really see that much change, because these elites are really going out there so that they can grease their own, you know, system, and they can stay in power. And so the whole idea is that they will stay in power and they'll do everything to stay in power. So if it means that they should be co-opting the opposition and whatever, they will do that. In fact, nowadays, you don't kill off your opposition. You know, you don't assassinate people, you co-opt them. They become part of the party. And in Malawi, you know, we have that 50+1 law that requires now that if you're going to win an election, you must win 51%. And so it's forcing these parties to come into alliances. And even the alliances that we have now, you know, it's a very shaky alliance, because, you know, it's not an alliance that's really come together because of, you know, ideology or, you know, a sense of some unity. It's a unity of let's get into the throne. And so it's fraught with so many different issues and difficulties. Right, and so I think when we look at our politics, I think we should be understanding it from that point of view. We have a big man politics. We have a new colonialism where the colonial masters still control us, the IMF, the World Bank, right, and they still have those multinational corporations that come and take our resources and stuff like that. And Dr. David, I was watching Still in Africa. I don't know if you watched that documentary.
Probably have.
It's called
Yes.
Still in Africa, right? About a copper mine or a copper company. Glencore, I think, is the company.
Glencore, yes. We've had a recent incident with Glencore, but please go ahead.
Yes, and you know how they should have given millions of dollars in terms of taxes, but they made sure that they sold their iron ore to, is it copper ore, to their headquarters in Switzerland, and they should have given that year, they say, about $398 million. So again, we have people with a big man politics mindset that basically are trying to milk as much as possible so that they can stay in power. And those ones that will be given to corruption and all sorts of things, and the people will not be something that they are going to think much about. The people are just a source of their votes, a source of their looking good that we've done something. So I don't know, maybe I'm painting a very pessimistic picture, but that's where we are. That's where we are. Right, that's where we are, and as long as that is a game that is being played, it will always be like that. It will always be like that. There's a political scientist in Malawi, Professor Blessings Chisinga. He says that government after government in Malawi, right, has ensured that people don't move on to the middle class, because when people do move up to the middle class, then you cannot control them with fertilizer subsidies and stuff like that. That's when they'll start demanding for their rights. And so I think that's another thing that we also need to be looking at. So in what ways does this regime uplift the people? In what ways does this regime make education truly universal? Our first multi-party government spoke of a universal primary education. It's universal, yes, but it's also universal in the way that its standards have just come down. So those are not things that help us. Ultimately, we need a good education. We need drugs in the hospitals. We need functioning systems. And if any party can bring that about, well, then we're making progress. But from where I'm standing from, I'm thinking I still have to see that progress. I hear a lot of talk, very nice speeches if they're coming from my part of the world, very great oratory. But at the end of the day, we want the food on the table. The proof is in the pudding, as they say in England, right?
Yeah. Dr. David, the question still stands. If you look at it, it's infuriating. It is infuriating to know that a certain nation is controlling Zambia's minds, and the Zambians themselves don't have a say onto this thing. I mean, what needs to be done then in that sense? And again, my question is then, how can we put stamina in this thing so that we hold accountable those that needs to be held accountable, but at the same time that this thing, we begin to see the progress of it. The reality is we want good life in Africa, for sure.
Absolutely.
What needs to be done?
I mean, echoing the words that I've just been listening to. I mean, I've listened to Bishop Gilbert, and I was listening to Dr. Nika. Both very right in many ways. And just to bring up, first thing I'd like to clarify is that there's nothing wrong with us as a people. We are not inferior. So I'm echoing what Bishop said to start with. We are just as brilliant. We are great in our own rights. I was top of my class right here in England, so I know that we are not inferior.
Come on.
So I know we are not inferior.
I like that.
So that's right. So when we talk about whether Africa is inferior or the West is better, or they're doing things better, a few things I've noted down, which I'd like to just highlight to this panel today. Number one is that continuation. A lack of continuation has been one of the biggest Achilles heels that Africa has. A lack of continuation, what I mean by that is the Western democracy we've adopted, as I've already said, means that Obviously, it's a give and take. In some countries, like Bishop there might say, actually, we've had continuation, but still no change. But when I say continuation, I'm talking about a vision and a program that continues and thrives, as compared to every leader wants to run their own thing. That's one thing I see. The other thing I see is checks and balances. We lack this a great deal in most African governments, Zambia included. I don't know how Malawi is run exactly, but the president has too much power. And that means that they control the judiciary, they control the police, they control the armed force, they control everything, which means nobody can hold them accountable. As a result, if they decide to go rogue or become corrupt or do whatever, it just goes crazy until they get voted out. Then you have to start all over again. So we need a situation where we can have checks and balances, where we can take away, literally, judiciary take away some authority and some power that our presidents have, so that it can go down to the houses of parliament for debate and approval every time in terms of progress, and visions can be sustained that way, as compared to somebody just coming, I can fire you if you're the Chief Justice, so you can rule against me. Too much power to our presidents. I also noted that which is a point I think I've just been mentioned by my predecessors who've just spoken before me, is we have not attained real independence. I know we celebrate Independence Day. We have ours on the 24th of October, 1964. I think Malawi, you guys got yours in 64, around about the same time, because Kamuzu and Kaunda were doing this at the same time. I think shortly after that, Mugabe and Zimbabwe followed. But we haven't really attained real independence. You've just alluded to Glencore there. It's a classical case of a British company that continued to siphon and take money out of the nation of Zambia illegitimately for many years, up until just recently, way beyond.
I seem to have lost
on the broadcast. Oh, there we go. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good. We're back.
Awesome. Praise God. I thought it was my network. And so, in a nutshell, I believe that we really need a genuine change of mindset. I'll give you a classic example, which will justify what we are talking about when we talk about the lack of real independence. Okay. The current government, the HHUPND government in Zambia, brilliant intentions, brilliant ideas. They've just released the new budget for 2022. I've taken time to evaluate the budget and scrutinize it and look at it, and it looks great. It's got some great promises, great tax breaks for different people groups and business groups, and it looks very promising. It has a few challenges with it, which I cannot avoid but mention, which are the fact that obviously every budget is balanced. You have the income, £10, and expenditure £10. It's balanced. That's your budget. It has to balance. However, when you look at the way the income is set, I'll leave all the other aspects of the budget. I just want to talk about one aspect of it, which is real independence. Almost over a third, I believe, of the budget is dependent on foreign aid. So now you are making a budget on the basis that the UK and America and China and everybody else is going to lend us money or give us money. The Bible says in Proverbs 22, verse 7, the rich always rule over the poor. It goes on to say that the borrower is always a slave to the lender. So as long as we remain dependent on donations and handouts and grants and the Western world, we will never really see true independence. This is why we are blessed with so many resources in the ground. God has already blessed Africa. In fact, if you're praying out there, Christians, don't pray God to bless Africa. Africa is already blessed. Pray for managers. Don't pray for blessings. We've already got the blessing. In Genesis 2, verse 5, the Bible says God had not released rain because there was nobody to manage the earth. Until there was a manager to manage the earth, God didn't release the provision or the rain. But when man became available and was ready to manage it again, then God released the provision and the resources. God has already given us everything we need to prosper in Africa. What we need is good management. And this is why, just to finish off so I can hand over to somebody else. When you look at the progress in Rwanda, for instance, I'm one of those few people that will never use Rwanda as an example to say, oh, we cannot be like Rwanda. We can never be like Rwanda. In fact, I don't want to be like Rwanda. I don't want any African president to be like Rwanda. Why? Why do I say that? Because the only reason Kagame has managed to achieve what he's achieved is by literally bullying everybody into fulfilling the vision that he has for the country. And it was a good vision, and he has seen it through, not through democracy. So the only way to emulate Kagame is to become a dictator and then have a good vision and be a dictator and then force everybody to follow that good vision, like how Dubai was built. Nobody said anything. One man had a vision, build Dubai. Kagame had a vision, build it. Nobody can say anything. Now, if you want to practice democracy like in Zambia or Zimbabwe or Malawi, you cannot do what Kagame has done because he is a one-man ruler, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. And so I'm going to shut up now, but what I want to say is we need real independence, which means we need to start weaning ourselves from being dependent on the IMF and the lending and the grants, which is what John Magufuli did very well in Tanzania, winning ourselves. I think that the Ghanaian president is also trying to do that. Akufo Nana, I think that's his name. Good man, I like it when he speaks. But we need to start winning ourselves from dependency on the West, because every time we depend on them, they bring in conditions with their money. We have to fulfill those conditions in order for us to use that money. And as a result, we remain slaves to the lender. It's biblical and it's our reality.
The questions tonight are, can we be consistent in what we see happening? That was my question, but it looks like somehow we've actually crushed it down and say, I think there's not much substance in what we're beginning to see, although we want it to remain and to be stable. This is, I mean, you can tell that these minds are ready to engage you guys and to even educate us. Also, I think it balances us and puts us in a position where we can pray effectively. Don't go away. We are back in a second. This is going to be an issue. As long as we are dependent on somebody else, there's no consistency. In fact, I was actually thinking about this about continuation. Dr. David speaks much about, one president comes in and wants to start something all over again or something new to try and bring in his philosophy or what he thinks can make that nation great. But I think for as long as we are always studying, there will be no progress at all because we're always studying. Can we continue something? Now, my problem is Africa has been ripped in almost every other country. There's too much of corruption. If we are to continue from where the other one has left, we will be continuing the very systems. Let me bring in Bishop Gilbert Gumbo. Bishop Gilbert, my fear is, and I'm taking from that thread of, if we're gonna really build, apart from stop the handouts, and also don't just start something just for the sake of trying to bring in your philosophy. If we're gonna do that, surely there's so much in these nations that have been laid by the predecessors, or have been let in by the predecessors, or by the people that were there, and we've ousted them, and we just need to clean up the mess. This is where the problem is, and so probably I still think that beginning is okay, but maybe there's need for stamina to make these things we begin in good faith to stay continuing? Bishop Gilbert Gamble.
I was tempted to jump in when my brothers were talking. There's a book that I read ages ago. I would recommend the book by it's a Chinese author. I might be saying it wrong, pronouncing his name wrong. Ha Jung Shang, something like that. But the title is very interesting. It says "Kicking Away the Ladder," and I think the title and what's in the book really summarizes what I think is happening now. That the so-called developed countries that we look at and we think they've set the pace. I think the author argues that what they've done is just get up there and then kick the ladder off. So we are left with no ladder to climb on. The very things that they used for them to get to where they are, they don't want us to do that anymore. It's all wrong. You can't do this, you can't do that. I can't mention some of the things now because it will sound very, very incorrect. But the very countries that we admire, they were built on cheap labor. They were built on human abuse. They were built on corruption. They were built on stolen substances, slavery, and they are where they are now. And we admire them. They say we are developed. You are not developed. I even struggle with some of these terms like the developing countries. I mean, what makes you think you are more developed than me? Because I think there's a book by, I've got it somewhere in my books, I can't remember the author, who says freedom is development. Culture is development. Development is not just economical. There are other ways that we can look at it and say, look, as Africans, we are more developed than the Western countries that we look at and admire. So I think if we are going to answer this question, we have got to sit down and say, who are we as a people? And where are we trying to go? Without us measuring ourselves with the so-called developed countries. And I think in terms of continuity, my biggest struggle, my friends, which maybe here you may, the MC or the meeting leader may switch me off. I think I disagree with the whole idea that it's only when an opposition wins an election that we think that's development. I disagree with that. There are times where maybe the ruling party is doing a good job, but we just oppose for the sake of opposing. And that brings us back to a brother who was saying we are always undoing the good work that's been done. Whether you don't like a political party, if they've done a good job, let's build on what they have done. Let's build on foundation laid. But we are people that are so good at opposing, knocking down, thinking nothing is fair as long as I don't win. So I think that's our downfall.
That's very crucial.
Intriguing. Chakunge, do you have something that you want to bite on, Pastor Chako?
Yeah, I want to agree with my brother Gilbert. I think part of it, like I said, that it's us citizens that our mindset is not changing, and we keep changing politicians. And so we expect that when we change the government, then if I benefit from that government, then that government is doing a good job. If I don't personally benefit, then that government has failed. And so, and our politicians also know that, and they use that against us. Because if you look at most of Africans, the knowledge that they have about democracy is not the real democracy that they're supposed to have. Because most of Africans, democracy is destroying things. Democracy is doing what I want to do. That's if I find a road sign on the road, I can take it down. That's democracy. So we have enough knowledge to just enough to think that we know, but we don't. And so the little knowledge that we know actually is the one that is destroying us as citizens. So even right now, when we see citizens rising up and saying, okay, it's a revolution, we want to change government, they change government not because they want to see their country going forward, but it's for their personal benefit. And so after the government changes, if there is no personal benefit, there are the same people who also go back to the streets and say, we want to change. because at the end of the day, what they were looking for is a personal benefit, not the benefit of the country as such. So that's why we keep going in circles, because our mindset is still my stomach, just to fill my stomach. That's the problem that we have. Politicians are looking to fill their stomachs, so they look at big corporations and colonizers to oil their hands, and they continue milking our resources. They are fine. And then we too, we go to the same politicians and they share us their little things that they can share us, and we are happy. So as long as my family is fed, I'm fine. But we are not looking at the whole thing. We're not looking at the whole country as, are we going forward? If I let go of this thing and say, okay, we still want you to be accountable, am I going to go, is our country going to go forward? Or are we just going to be looking at our stomachs? So that's, for me, that's why I keep on saying it's the citizens that have to change. When the citizens change, then these politicians, I've seen a meme somewhere. It's this person, I think there's a group of people on one side and then there's a politician on one side, and people just said, okay, we just need to move and then the politicians will fall. That meme is there. We just need, as citizens, to say, okay, we know this is what is happening in our country, and we want you guys to be really accountable. And when they come with their handouts, we say, no, we don't want this. What we want is real change. And then things will change. But otherwise, if we just say, okay, as long as you're oiling my hands, everybody will just look at their stomach and we'll keep on being at the same place.
But this is where, Chucks, this is where the problem is, because one person may want to deny the handout, but then the other one goes behind, still gets the handouts. How do we then really deny these handouts in such a way that, if you're saying let's not accept it, but and I don't want to accept it, but then there's this one who just feels, guys, I'm starving at my house, I need this, so he goes behind and gets it. How do we end this kind of a culture? Like you're saying, I think the problem sometimes is not just these politicians, as corrupt as they are, but sometimes we have helped them with the strings, isn't it? So how do
we are their enablers.
Wow. So how do we then, how do we as a community stop?
I think
Go ahead.
To help my sister out, I think one of our problems is when we are voting for people, we vote for personalities, we vote for individuals. We don't vote for policies. We don't look at what is this person going to do, what is this party going to do. We look at the individual, and to even push it further. And I think that's why you called us tonight. As church people, we vote for anyone who puts the name Jesus into their campaign, and we think that solves it, And because we are so a religious people, politicians, anyone who claims to be, sorry to mention this, you guys are from Malawi. Anyone who claims to be a pastor, I'm not claiming, but who is a pastor, and gets into politics, we think just because they are the pastor or because they have the name Jesus, they are going to transform things overnight. But we bypass the policies of their party. So we all run to this so-called pastor. Zambia is a good example. Chiluba was a Christian. Chiluba was a man of God, and I'm sure David will tell you he didn't take them that far, and he was a Christian. So I think one of the dangers of the African community is religion is now our biggest thing. Anyone who mentions in God's name I'll do this, we don't see beyond the title of pastor, man of God, this, and we don't look at, okay, you are, what's on paper, what are you saying you are going to deliver, what's your policy? You might be, because prayer won't solve that. It's going to be solved by what are you going to do. And afterwards we are so devastated, we are so angry because we thought prayer was going to solve it.
And that has been something that I was talking to somebody else. I said, most of the times Christians, we've ended at, God answers prayer. Prayer is going to solve it. Let's just pray. Let's just pray. Oh, there's a problem in this. There's a problem here. Let's just pray. We've ended
so
up being
unchristian.
Sorry, say that, man of God.
And that is so unchristian.
Okay. Come on, elaborate.
Yeah.
Elaborate a little bit.
Because I think, the Bible tells us how How ought we to live? He has told you, O man, what God requires of you: to do justly, to love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Right? Malawi is 80-something% Christian. Zambia is 80-something% Christian. Now, if
Actually,
Christians,
just a correction, Doctor.
yes,
Zambia
yes,
is 95. Dr. David is
95%.
laughing. It's smart.
Right?
We are
There you go.
we are ahead of
And
you
I'm
guys.
sure.
We are 101%.
Okay.
You know,
Go ahead, Dr. Felix.
All the prophets come from my country.
True.
Malawi,
But honestly speaking,
we ordained your prophets. We ordained your prophets. You know.
that's very true. And he took the mantle.
Carry on, doctor. Carry on.
And he took the mantle from you.
Gilbert, you'll be banned. Gilbert, you'll be banned from this show. Okay, Dr. Felix.
Yes.
Carry on,
So,
doctor. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Dr. Felix, go ahead.
But I think the truth of the matter is the church has a colonized faith, has a colonized religion, right? In the sense that the church does not see herself as salt and light, right? And so the starting of our nations was colonial. It was about, minerals and labor that the Europeans wanted, and so they carved up our borders and made us these countries that are very artificial, in the sense that you have half the people group in one place in Zambia, the other half in Malawi. The chief of the Chewa is in Zambia. Most of the Chewa are in Malawi. That kind of crazy stuff. And so we should not forget that what we have inherited as Christianity is a colonized Christianity, right? Which could not have been salt and light, right? Which could not have done what the Ten Commandments requires that we should do. Because if we didn't lie to each other, if we didn't steal from each other, if we didn't covet our neighbors' things, well, we wouldn't have the corruption and all the things that we're talking about.
I'm live today.
And then Jesus moves it forward on the Sermon on the Mount and tells us that, look, it's not just a matter of you lusting, of you sleeping with somebody. It's actually you lusting after somebody, right? And so the church has ignored character, and especially the Pentecostal charismatic church, the evangelical church, the born-again church, has replaced character with charisma. And as long as you don't have character, you can never build any society. We can never build any society. Greed now has been baptized, and it's called prosperity. And the money that we say is corrupt, right? The money that we say is stolen from the government is tithe money. It's offerings, or it's donations when you invite the honorable so and so, right, or dishonorable so and so to be your guest of honor, right? And so we are part of the problem. I mean, just maybe some 3-4 months ago, there was a person that was part of the old president's entourage, bodyguard, or something like that. And this guy built churches and menses for pastors. And 2-3 months later, he's in the papers that, oh, look, he owns so many cars, he owned da-da-da-da-da-da. And that money went to the church. Recently, the business magnate that was, in court because of trying to bribe the judges for a historic case in the courts because of the re-elections of the re-election case. Well, that person 2 weeks before or 3 weeks before he was given a sentence on corruption charges. Well, he had given a donation to one of the big synods that are Presbyterian here. And so it begs the question, so where are our morals? So as long as the church is not being salt and light, we shall be talking about this. And probably we shouldn't be blaming the politicians. We should be blaming us. We are the problem. Because the politicians, they come to the church. We are the problem. I rest my case.
Pastor Chikunge, I think Dr. Felix echoes exactly what you just said there, that we are the problem in some ways. We have actually, we've made these guys steal easy. And somehow we don't even think that they're in there because of us. And they shouldn't steal. But we actually have created that culture where they're comfortably doing that and giving us pennies, and we're happy with this. Now, my question would come to this because Dr. Felix says, for as long as we keep doing this, we will not go anywhere. My question is then, how do we pray effectively, for these governments? The truth is, we are saying that prayer probably is not the whole solution, but we still have, we have a responsibility as a church to pray for governments. Pastor Chakunga, how do we effectively pray for the governments to function and root out all the bad weeds and give in to freshness and progress with that? What is our prayer like? Should be.
I think it's praxis. That's what we need. It's both prayer and then we go and do. We actually change, because the problem with I'll talk about Pentecostals. We come to church, we laid hands, we fall down, and we go back, and we still do the same things. That laying of hands doesn't change anything. So people are coming for deliverance, they fall down, they vomit, and they go back. They live the same way they were living before deliverance. So if you look at it, you're looking at people who are not changing in any way. There was a time when people when just saying I'm born again, people trusted you because you are born again. But now that is not even something that people trust. Actually, people are so afraid of born again people because they're saying these people cannot be trusted. So there has to be prayer, but also there has to be character change, where we are now showing the character of Christ. You will find that even those politicians are not afraid of people who are claiming to be born again because of the character that the politicians see. If they see a serious person, they would be afraid of that person, but they are not, because even the people that are claiming to be Christians, people that are claiming to be born again, are not serious in their walk with the Lord. I've always said that if somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, I like your Christianity. That your Christianity is very good. I actually like it. Not that like the others. These ones, they are too much. They are holier than thou." It's not a compliment. Actually, what they're saying is, I am free to sin in your presence, and so your Christianity doesn't convict me in any way. Unfortunately, that's where most of us are at that place, where our Christianity is not convicting anyone. Politicians can come to our churches, take that dirty money and give us, and we gladly accept it because our character doesn't convict them. So as a church, there is a place where we have to pray, but there has to be character change. And then the character change, when we change our character, then we will be able now to stand up and say, we can't be doing this, because right now we don't have any moral standing to say, oh, politicians are doing this, because we are doing exactly the same things that they're doing. So even when we stand up and say this is wrong, they'll just turn to us and say, okay, you're doing exactly the same thing. So why do you expect me to stop?
Have all the answers? Probably not. Is there sense in what is being discussed? 101%. Yes. I do believe definitely that if probably the whole community was sitting down to listen to this kind of a discussion, we would be far better. And I don't believe for once that these men and women of God are just saying it for the sake of saying it. These are practices. These people practice what they preach. I mean, I know most of these, I should say all of these are my friends. I have high respect for all of them. So what am I trying to say? The church needs to have an understanding, and we need to be taught. We need to be established in this and move to possess and be a successful nation. We are that nation that God is building. And I believe that, God cannot build a nation without a Christian at the heart of it. And I'm not talking about pastors. You've heard Bishop Gambo talking about, we think that because I named the name Jesus, that means that settles it. No, we've had those that have actually built churches with dirty money, and pastors clapping hands in the name of hallelujah. Jesus has built us a house. We need to act, and we need systems to change. I've challenged it before. If you didn't listen to that, but that was a while ago. We sat down. Chakongea was there, and we talked about what is the problem. And I remember, I think even Dr. David was there. I remember saying, these nations we're talking about, they are Christian. Let's put it this way: we are Christian nations. We call ourselves Christians, yet corruption is rampant. There's a problem here. And somebody asked the question. I think it's the Chimam. It says, so what should the church do if we agree that it's the main problem? What should we do? I think the answer that Chakongea gives is simple. Let's be practical. Let's leave the character we're talking about of Christ. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring back again the panel. Let me go to Bishop Gilbert Gamble. Surely you and me have spoken. Let me just push you back a little bit. We've spoken about maybe let's not be quick to wipe out everything that we're beginning to see in these new systems that are coming into place. Probably we need to give them a chance. And I remember you and me have spoken and said probably we just need to give them a bit more time and bear with them, that they're gonna do it right, but there's some hope. In our discussion, we felt that there's some hope. And if I may echo from Jack's discussion before, that I think it's not just going to be bam bam, the kind of a Kagame. Dr. Davis speaks of a Kagame dictator kind of person who actually just wants it done this way. Let's get this out. I want this. I want that. Bam. The country is smashing beautiful. There is something at least we can see in this government, Bishop Gilbert, that you said, let's give them some time.
Maybe to quote what my friend David said, maybe, and it's just a maybe. I'm not saying that's the best, but I think maybe we function better under the Kagame strategy. And it's just my thought. Maybe we do better under that environment where there's someone who says, look, this is where we are going, whether you like it or not. This is where I want us to go. Maybe. And I'm not saying we must do that, but I'm just saying maybe we tend to thrive under that. But to come back to your question about giving our leaders a chance, I think you and I, Chance, were talking Lawi. And I was saying and this is me as a Zimbabwean, I'm your neighbor, don't throw tomatoes at me. We are neighbors. My struggle with Malawans is I watched all the excitement of Chakwera taking over, but I think to me the excitement was, I took it with a bit of mixed emotions. I felt like people were overexcited, not on the ticket of his political promises or his policies, but religion took over. The excitement was based on he is a pastor. And I'm looking at now thinking the disappointment that's slowly brewing in the pot is coming from people who were expecting a pastor to do something as a pastor. So I was saying to you, Chance, I think we need sometimes to strip off the pastoral element of a leader and just see a leader as a leader who is going to have a dosage of his own corruption. Whether you guys are going to say, okay, now he needs to go for Holy Communion, I don't know. But there's going to be that dosage of knowing that this man is a human being, he's going to make his mistakes. And this whole idea of he hasn't done anything, he's hardly been there. Whenever you take over something, you are still going to be, for a few years, bound by whatever was left in the process, policies that were already running, contracts that were already signed up, that you can't just wake up tomorrow and tell the Chinese you are out. They've got 100-year contracts, they've got 10-year contracts that are going to bind you for a while. So I felt like when we're having a discussion, the whole argument that nothing is happening, I was thinking, look at you thinking, how long has it been there? He's just arriving, he's still unpacking his luggage. So there is a tendency to expect things to be done too quick. And my fear was, it was all being fed by this whole wind of, he is a pastor, he's going to work magic. When he goes to pray, God will answer him. And I don't think so. I think he's going to realize that there are some things that his Bible won't solve. He's got to sit down and think. So I think that's when I was saying to you, my brother, I think there's got to be a slowing down of expectations. Give this guy his term. Let's see how far he can go. We're expecting too much in the name of religion.
Well, let me kind of like butt in a bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think part of the problem here, or part of the sentiments that we hear from people, are the fact that there were promises that were made, that the president actually made when I come into power. This is what is going to happen. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this and do that. And so some of the frustration is coming from those things. That okay, but you had said you would do such things, and yet it is within your power that you can do such things. Why haven't you done that? Right, and I think that in as much as there's a large chunk of people that will have said, well, that's because it's a pastor. I think there was also another chunk of people, a large chunk of people that basically said, and I think it would have been the opposite, that would say, well, a pastor has no place in politics, And so I wouldn't characterize maybe the majority of the thinking in terms of Reverend Chakwera becoming president, that they were basically thinking, oh, now we have a man of God and these things are going to turn out. I think there's a variety there. Yeah, there's a variety there. Some that said, well, I never voted for him as pastor. I voted for him as president, right? And so there would also be others that would say, well, I'm voting for him because I think he'll make a good president because he's been a good pastor. Yeah, but as you say, these are things that they need time. They need time, and these are democracies, quote and unquote, that we're working out as we're going along. We're learning what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
Right, David.
Yes, sir.
They need time, but then we don't have much time. The reality is they've only got 5 years to implement what they have to implement, and we need change. That's for real. I mean, how do they balance? Sorry,
now they say we have 2063, Vision 2063. So everybody is supposed to be fitting that. So the idea is every political party that comes in must be saying, okay, so here's our manifesto. Here are the things that we're going to do, and they're in line with the Vision 2063. So hopefully that's going to work.
Yeah, but we had Vision 2020, and we are still here.
There you go.
but Felix, they know in 2063 they will all be dead by then anyway.
Come again?
No,
for sure, everybody.
They say 2063.
They will not be there for sure.
They know by then they'll be dead anyway, so we can't hold
That's
them
right.
accountable.
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah, go on, my sister.
Yeah, I was just saying we had Vision 2020. There were so many promises. We were singing about 2020. It looked like it was too far then, and here we are in 2020, and nothing from that Vision 2020 was done. So maybe now they had to put it a little bit more further so that we don't get to experience it.
Chakunge, I hear that Kagame actually stole our 2020.
Yes, that's what I have heard too. That Paul Kagame took our Vision 2020 and he implemented it. And
this is what I'm saying,
now.
David.
Yes,
then surely I think I want to agree with you. Let's go the Kagame way, because he's implemented it within a short space of time. Rwanda is glittering.
I think we can learn lessons from Rwanda and Kagame, but not necessarily adopt the Kagame system, because it's a dictatorship system, and I don't think anybody wants that. He's an army general, and he runs it with an iron fist. So I don't think you want to be rude like that. However, I am tempted to desire a system where you have one party that is strong. I'll give you examples. South Africa, Botswana, great economies. And off the back of that is one party, one strong party. They have the ANC in South Africa, and they have obviously the main party in Botswana, who have been the only party, and every election they win. The only thing they change is the leader of that party. So if the leader is not performing well, remove them, bring somebody better. If they bring somebody better, but that same party still wins, which means they kind of have an advantage of doing a similar thing that Kagame has done, which is continuing with their manifesto or their policies.
David,
Now,
you forgot to mention Zimbabwe as well. David, you forgot to mention Zimbabwe.
I could mention Zimbabwe.
1980s, so please. Yeah, don't forget us.
Oh God,
Bishop, the challenge I have with putting Zimbabwe in that bracket is because I love the country so much that it hurts me to see a lack of thriving, if you like, that I would like to see. We used to be one country, Malawi, Botswana. I mean, Malawi, Zimbabwe.
David, don't take me there, David. Don't take me there. We have been destabilized by the Western forces.
I understand, but I think with Zimbabwe, the challenge I think
don't bother.
There hasn't been much change in the regime because obviously you have a president who was the vice president of the former regime. So in a way, there wasn't a real change, if you like, that happened there. Similar policies, similar everything, but maybe a change of leadership, maybe the same party, but change of leadership, fresh minds, fresh leadership. I mean, in Zambia, there's a saying that says, I don't know if I'm allowed to say vernacular on this channel. I don't even know why we call it vernacular. It's our language. Chumbumu Nshololwa. It means you cannot straighten a sweet potato that's already grown. If it's bent this way, when you try to straighten it, it will break. And I think that's what we're trying to do wrong a little bit in Africa. We're trying to straighten corrupt grown-ups. It's going to take a long time to cut off corruption from grown-up people who are already corrupt. They're already bent that way. So we have systems, even if whether it's Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, I can bet you right now, and don't call me a gambler because I use word bet. Some Christians are so spiritual. The man of God said bet. Anyway, when you look at the people in government, you will find that you can trace them back. They've been around for a while. Most of these, they're embedded somewhere in systems. And the corruption is not just with the person at the top. You could even change the president, but the systems are corrupt all the way through. So when we talk about changing Africa and character being a big thing, like our sister Chakongela said there, with character, I mean, change is not change until you change. And so it's going to take a change in character from the pastors receiving money. That's a character issue. From corrupt politicians, character issue. Corrupt policemen, character issue. Wherever there's leakage in Africa, it's all about character. Dodgy contracts with the Chinese or the Western world, character issues. So they are all character issues. So there are two solutions without me going on too much, because when you give the preacher a microphone, they don't shut up. So two solutions for me is, number one, a miracle. Okay, the only way you can straighten a grown sweet potato is with a miracle. Okay, you're not gonna straighten it any other way. The only other way is forget about our generation. I know this sounds bad. Forget about our generation. Let us trust and believe God for a beautiful, better Africa for our children and great-grandchildren. And we can start now by putting the right systems in place. Our generation, no hope. You and I, we are too grown up to enjoy Africa. I can tell you that right now. The only thing we can do is fight for our children, because we are too grown up. The current grown up leaders are corrupt to their core. The only way they can change is either through a miracle, or I don't know, God will gonna have to come down and change all the systems in one day. It's not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna take a long time. That means the only hope we have is my little Juliana, who is 6 years old. They are the generation that are going to enjoy in Africa. But it starts with us. We start putting the systems in place, start fighting in place, start changing mindsets now. That's why with my foundation, I work with young people, because I believe in changing mindsets of young people for a better future. It's going to be very hard to change grown-up people. And I'm so sorry. I don't mean to sound negative, but it's going to be tough, but much, much easier to mold our young people and our children for the future. The best we can hope for our generation is a little change. but not much, because we are grown up and we are set in our ways and habits, and only a miracle can change us in a drastic way.
Dr. Felix.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean,
Chance, before I've got a question before Doctor comes in. I've got a question maybe before Doctor answers. My question is, I hear what David is saying, but let's rewind and go back to I don't know how far we can go back in the past, when we had kings and our own royalties and all that, and royal way of living. Were we that corrupt before the white men came to our continent? Were the way of living, were we as corrupt as we are now?
I think we were. We were.
In what
Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken the slaves.
Some of them were stolen, my sister.
That's true.
I don't know. I think
some of them. Because what I'm trying to argue, I think this whole idea of corruption is something that has been deposited in us, and we have allowed it to grow. I don't think that's who we are in our nature.
Yeah.
That's not who we are. We are our brother's keepers. We look after one another. But we have been made to desire more, to never be happy, to always think I can achieve more than what I have now. That's not who we are as Africans.
Bishop, when you talk about have we always been like that? Africa was at one point the richest, continent anywhere. So we were not always broke and out and messed up as we are. In fact, the richest man who ever lived, Musa, is an African king. He was richer than Solomon. Solomon is number 6 in the richest people of all time. Musa was like 200 times richer than Solomon. He was an African king. And so when we look at Africa, when Zambia got independence in 1964, the kwacha was equivalent to the pound. In fact, the kwacha was 2 kwacha to the 1 pound. So the kwacha was stronger. So we haven't always been messed up. Well, and things have just deteriorated over the years.
Yeah.
I think, in terms of shaping our cultures, I think that's what this is about. It's about, what are our values, and Africa really is the richest continent. I mean, every known mineral to humanity is found in abundance here. Probably the DRC is the richest country in the world.
In the world, you're right.
Yeah. And so I think our issues are not really about, what resource or whatever, but really it's about the values that we have, values that make us to be corrupt, values that make us to be tribalistic, regionalistic, right? Values that make us to deviate from the very things that will make us to prosper, right? And those values, and I think as Brother Gilbert was saying, the corruption and stuff, maybe it's not something that came from our culture per se, but part of that capitalistic mindset of making money, of amassing as much as you can. And we know that, since 500 years ago, the West has had, or Europe has had, this thing about always trying to accumulate things. Hence, we have the climate change crisis right now, right? And so it's our going back to values that are consistent with Umuntu, Umunu, Ubuntu, that if we go to the Bible as well, we'll find that those things are quite consistent with what the Bible is saying. The 10 Commandments, the Sermon on the Mount, that's what we're called to live by. And the kind of systems that we should want to institute in our countries and our governments, as much as it is possible for us to do in a democratic state, must be those that speak of the shalom of God, of the peace of God, of righteousness and love and mercy amongst people, right? And so to the extent that we stand on those values, to the very same extent that the organizations that we're a part of as Christians are going to be imbued by those values and therefore change, and society will change. But if we don't live by those values, if we say one thing and do another thing, well, we'll just be just like every person that say they're a Christian nation. And, being a Christian nation is something that, so-called Christian nations have been playing on for, I don't know, since Constantine, since the 300s, right? And so there's nothing new there. right? And so we need to get back to our values. Our kids need to know the values of the Bible, those 10 commandments, that Sermon on the Mount. We need to live that stuff out. We need to not lie. We need to stop lying. We need to stop stealing. We need to stop coveting. We need to stop all these things. And we need to keep ourselves accountable to that standard. Now, of course, there's always a thing of, so who can live by that standard? Well, to a large extent, our Christianity is not about perfection, isn't it? It's our trying by the changing of our will, by the transformation of the Holy Spirit, that we would aspire to those things. So I think if we start living according to what the Bible tells us to live by, the Sermon on the Mount being the chief of what being salt and light is about, we are going to see transformation. It may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen another 10 years, but it's going to happen, right? And our politicians in countries like Malawi, countries like Zambia, they come to church. If they come into that kind of orbit, they come into that kind of value system, they too are going to be changed. And that they shall be the change of our countries. But I should hasten to say,
that we need.
Yes, but I should hasten to say, this is not the kingdom. The kingdom is going to come with Jesus. So we'll never have perfection down here, right? We should be trying our best, living our level best according to the kingdom, but we should know that the kingdom will only be established. Peace, love, unity, righteousness, ultimately will come with the kingdom when the kingdom has come, when Christ has come back again. That doesn't mean that right now we say, look, just forget about the world, it's going to hell. No, it's to say we are representatives of the kingdom of God, so we should be salt and light. We should show the values of our kingdom, and we should live for our king and let the world around us see that we are here to represent the kingdom of God.
Thank you.
Ladies,
I'm looking at just to concur with Dr. Nyika, but I'm looking at the values that we had, the Ubuntu values and all those things. You will find that democracy has come and has brought in rights, which in those rights, we haven't really been taught about rights. So everyone thinks that rights is doing what you want and not caring about anyone, not caring about the country, just caring about yourself. That's what we've been taught as rights now. So now, even Ubuntu, we don't have it because everybody is thinking about their own rights. And it's the same colonials that are coming and telling us about rights, and they don't explain to us so that we really know, not just hearing in passing, but we really know what our rights are. Because when we really know and understand why those rights are there, then because we have understood the rights that they are talking about, we will love our country and have that Ubuntu, taking those rights with responsibility. But right now, we are taking our rights without any responsibility. So that's why we go about messing our own country. Somehow, I feel like somehow we are a self-destructing people, where we do things just to distract ourselves, and the Westerners come and bring us more weapons to destroy ourselves. So yes, the values that we need to have, the Ubuntu values, and for those of us that are Christians, we need to use the Bible as our standard. And
I have a question following what you just said there, sis. Maybe you can pick it up. Maybe before we close today, because I'm looking at the time. When you look at the Western world's method of destabilizing most African nations, the systems they use are confusion, disunity, sponsoring different factions so that we are not united, civil wars, different uncertainties and dissatisfactions being created amongst ourselves. And when this continues, we don't get anywhere. Could it be possible that if we look at the system they use to keep us down and flip that over, maybe our answer is there? Because we are not progressing because somebody is funding our disunity and disorganization and fighting in order for us not to progress. What about we flip it, use the same system they are using to destabilize, flip it and do the opposite? Maybe we have a chance. Because you're talking about us being self-destructive. That self-destructive is sponsored by government.
Yes, it is sponsored. It is sponsored. Yeah, it is sponsored, because then they gave us the weapons to destroy ourselves, and we destroy ourselves with the weapons that they have given us. So we find ourselves that even the rights that they bring us and say, oh, everybody, these are the human rights that you must have, and then they promote them. Those human rights, they are brought to us, they don't really tell us the gist of the human rights. So we just take it on the surface and we run with it and we destroy ourselves. So everyone is thinking, I want to be a boss of myself. Actually, like in Malawi right now, there's a trending statement that's going about in our Venezuela. It says, it means everybody should do what they want. Now, if you are in a place and everybody is doing what they want, that's chaos. That's chaos. So unless we get to a point where we have our Ubuntu back, and when we have those values back, I cry for that time when we were in the dictatorship. Unfortunately, that was a time we actually learned how to cross the road. Now our children don't learn how to cross the road. Everybody crosses the way they want, and cars have to struggle. Drivers have to struggle with pedestrians on the road because we are not taught in schools anymore. It's gone. It's no longer there. Democracy came and it messed us up. Drivers drive the way they want. Everybody's doing their own thing. But when we were learning it in school, at least we were in a place where we were learning those values in school. Right now, I'm looking at how even our begging is taught from school. When I think the other time I visited UK, in every class I saw there was a box and it was for charity and it goes to Africa. And I'm like, we don't have that in our classes. So we are taught that you are the ones that are going to be receiving. Our friends are taught you are the ones that are supposed to be giving. Yeah. Somehow already, by the time we are growing up, we are already beggars. So I think we really need to go back to where our values are redefined, and then we know who we are as a people.
That's powerful.
Yeah, and that's because we have not deconstructed the colonial experience, right? I listened to these other podcasts and saw that there's a new book out that's talking about the educational system in Nigeria, and this person is basically tracing the history and basically saying that, look, the way that the educational philosophy was before colonialism is the very same way that history is taught today, right? So the history as written by the colonizers is what is being taught today, you know? So unless we intentionally go back to saying, okay, so what was there before these systems that were geared towards, you know, capitalizing us, objectifying us, and milking from us, right? Until we do that, we will never come at a place where we shall have an upper hand in what is happening to us. And I think the best place to go to get a better understanding of that is actually in the Bible, in the Word. When we go to the nation of Israel, which was enslaved, and how God tells them what their kings are supposed to be like, how they're supposed to be fair and just, how they should be looking out for the refugee, the sojourner, because they were refugees in Egypt, right? That makes for, you know, a society of Ubuntu, a society that cares for others. And that's the kind of stuff that we want to build in the earth, not an exclusive society which says, well, it's us who are up here and everybody else is down there, whether it's by race, so we are the white race, we are, you know, the anointed one of God, or maybe just even a Christian nation, we're above everybody else. I don't think so. I think what we're taught in the Bible is a love for all human beings. And the things that they shall know us by is not our power. They shall know that we are his disciples by his love. And so I just wanted to also say to David that I think if we use the very same tactics of the colonizer, we too shall become colonizers, right? We too shall become Babylon. So we come to Babylon with the spirit of love, with the spirit of Jerusalem, right? That we destroy that by coming in a contrary spirit altogether in the world, but not of the world, not of the values of the world, but there for the world. We love them, we witness to them, we point them to the master, and we do this from the standpoint of the cross, where it's weakness, not so much as power, but love that shows itself in suffering even for others.
Wow. Gentlemen,
wow,
we could be here all night. You know, these points so good, and I think towards this end of the matter, we are giving out answers to the questions that we have. What should we do? Men and brethren, what should we do? So I think this is more deep. I mean, this is deep and, you know, insightful, but then we've run out of time. I gotta let you guys go. I want to appreciate you in a very special way. All of you, Dr. David, Dr. Felix, Bishop Gilbert Gumbo, and Pastor Chaco. You guys are amazing. The thoughts that we brought about together here, I pray that this is echoed again and again in our communities, because I think that's the remedy we have in terms of, you know, changing our people that we have around us to be able to go and effect, you know, the change we want in the society that we all belong to. We love our countries. We pray for Zambia. We pray for Zimbabwe, that the revolution is gonna come without fail, Brother Gilbert.
Yes, amen.
Banderi.
Amen.
We are family. We are family.
We love Zimbabwe.
I can't wait. I feel that this is not going to be stopped.
I won't say. I will say nothing.
I know. We will come back. Dr. David, Dr. Felix, and Dr. Bishop Gilbert. Let's come back and talk about this, and I think we'll talk more about.
But Chance. Before we go, Chance, honestly, I think, let me be the last voice since I'm the bishop. Yeah, since I'm the bishop, let me go the bishop. I think.
Amen, Bishop. Amen.
Go ahead.
I think the problem with Africa is we hold too much to the Bible. If you can look at what we are talking here now, I think our emphasis is on the Bible. Whilst we are holding to the Bible, we are a continent that's busy producing prophets. Whilst Europe is producing physicians, we are busy building churches. Whilst Europe is building factories, we are busy doing all sorts of spirituality. Whilst Europe is way advanced in doing things that we are always running to them for help. I think our emphasis on spirituality is very much mad. We got to slow down. We think everything is spiritual, but some of it we got to sit down and I really go back. My degree was sociology, and I think Karl Marx, when he said religion is the opium of the masses, I think he was right. We use religion in a very dangerous way in Africa. I'm done.
That's another conversation.
I know. I know. Dr. Felix, please
Bishop
don't start.
Bishop has just proven a point. There's statistics tell us that the poorest countries in the world are Christian countries. That's what he's talking about. Those are statistics. So, but I'll leave that alone.
Dr. David.
The poorest countries are colonized countries.
we will not seize this.
Yeah,
Come on, yeah, go on. One last word from you.
We have got to meet. We have got to meet again, because there is so much foolishness in Africa.
Exactly.
In the name of God, whilst other countries are developing. Yeah, there's foolishness in the name of God, and we wonder why we are not going anywhere. We don't go anywhere because foolishness is taken over. The
Hold
Bible
fire. Hold fire. We'll come back. I need I need all you guys back on.
And I agree with you, Bishop, so that you know. I agree with you. I do.
In fact,
that's why Felix, sometimes I don't attend prayer meetings for Africa, because sometimes I ask myself, what are we praying for?
That's right.
It becomes too religious. Sometimes we don't need to pray. We need to sit down and talk. So I've heard so many. There are some prayer meetings now about Africa that I'm like, look, let me go and have my sleep, because we hide behind the Bible when we are meant to talk.
Bishop Gilbert, in fact, can I ask you guys? So
yes, sir.
let's just make time for this coming Sunday evening again. Can we do it? No. Yeah. Help me out. Sunday evening instead of a Monday.
Ooh. Okay.
Please.
Oh man.
Please.
That's okay for me.
Sunday evening.
We'll confirm.
No, but you said you want. We need to continue this. You've tickled these guys. You've woken them up now. You can't run away. I need you on Sunday. Fact. Thank you very much.
I'll confirm. I'll confirm. Yeah. I'll
okay.
do my best to be
all right. But listen, Chikungere, David, Felix, and Bishop Gambo, thank you so much for coming on, guys. I mean, listen, this is, we cannot exhaust. We can't exhaust, but we gotta educate the people. And one of the things, if you like, my desire has been for this show to be educative, you know, to be able to bring us Christians to, you know, just what you said, Bishop Gilbert. That's exactly why I felt it's important. Let's not just preach on a Sunday morning. People just need sometimes to sit down round the table, whether, you know, just you have that chill time, talk about these things in detail, rather than having just to shakalabalabalaba, and that's it. You know, we end in that name, and then all of a sudden we're still back in so much mess. Why is it that we pray too much? Yet Africa, listen to this. Africa is one nation, one continent that sleeps on a mountain more than any other nation, or more than any other continent. I mean, Chuck, so you know what I'm talking about. We sleep on the mountains, we pray, we fast. 21 days, 40 days fasting. What has changed? Anyway, hold fire. We'll be back. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless you so much. Have a good night. I'll see you next weekend.
Blessings.
So here we go. That's it. That's how we end it. It's been tough to finish. You can tell that I had just to push these men away because it's never ending. So much to talk about, so much to discuss, so much to really put together, so much wisdom in this. Guys, pull somebody else next time when we come back together. God bless you so much. Have a good night. I'll see you soon.